Okay, let's see here. Space Tomato. Why Star Citizen players are rethinking their capital ship fleets. Okay, let's check it out.
It's Thanksgiving on Earth, so we give thanks to the best ship manufacturer in the verse, Drake. I said it, and I meant it. Nobody...
Hold on. This woman has excellent taste. Already. I'm in.
Nobody owns me.
This IAE is the first event truly affected by the setting and realization that multi-crew ships are going to be more limited than many players thought. This through changes in engineering, weapon handling and requirements, further details of capital ship gameplay, and life support. This November, during the biggest sale of the year for CIG, we're seeing some interesting extra limited stock sales, Reddit threads of downsizing efforts to player fleets, and a general lack of enthusiasm for many. This is due to a combination of 4.
No, I don't think they'll copyright strike me. By all means, let me know if you do not want me to do your video, Space Tomato. I've seen that comment quite often. Let's Go says, will Space Mater's wife copyright strike? I think perhaps who did she copyright strike? Wasn't it Salty Mike or somebody? I think she copyright struck somebody who was being a complete douchebag to Space Tomato. That's my understanding of it. I've put out a few of Space Tomato's views with my own commentary on it, and I've never had any issues with Space Tomato or his wife. But if you guys have an issue with me watching, let me know. But yeah.
0.0 delays and the performance of the game throughout the year overall, which we'll talk about later this month. But it's also due in large part, I think, to players worried that their dreams of large-scale solo gameplay may not feel as possible anymore with the realization of no NPC crews at Star Citizen 1.0 and general ship maintenance looming with engineering gameplay next year. This is a video about solo players, NPC crew, ship requirements, and why most of you shouldn't be too worried about coming changes. In fact, I'm going to tell you here why you're going to benefit from them.
Good.
Let's get into it. Thank you for coming to my tomato talk.
I like the way he edits videos and the conversations he brings up. I think he makes great content.
One thing is clear about Star Citizen, and has been from the beginning. Large ships, their maintenance, and the importance of a crew were there from the first day of the Kickstarter. What was less clear was how often that would explicitly require other players. The communication around that has always been a bit nebulous, with the idea of 9 AI to every 1 player in the simulation of Star Citizen, to the occasional reference to NPC crew, to the regular questions regarding how solo capable of a game Star Citizen would be. It's plenty capable of that, they would say. At the end of the day, a player would always be better at their job than an NPC would, but you'd be able to make it work.
Rip Todd.
But over the years, things have changed. The game has grown more complex, and this answer didn't shift along with those complexities. So up until CitizenCon of this year, or shortly after it on Spectrum, many players in Star Citizen would buy these huge 150+ meter ships that required no less than 8 people to run efficiently. Warships capable of dominating large spaces, base-building behemoths that could manufacture a space station, huge mining vessels capable of pulling in tens of millions of credits an hour, all bought in the thousands for years, with the expectations in some cases that the player could just get lost in space on this massive ship amongst some NPCs building out their business alone. It does sound pretty nice, doesn't it? And up until a few weeks ago, with the announcement that NPC crews would not be in Star Citizen 1.0 at the release, many players were buying ships based on that idea. And there is no guarantee of when that will become a reality even after 1.0, or how integral it'll be to the overall design of Star Citizen. This would obviously then be a big change from what some players have been expecting. Along with this, engineering or ship maintenance, which was a confirmed feature during the Kickstarter, a detailed part of the game in early years, and in public development since 2020, has caught some people by surprise that ships won't always be pristine. This
has been discussed for a long time. This has been in the books for a long time. I think this is a lot of the new player base that comes in that maybe gravitate to games that are BR in nature or perhaps, lack the mental fortitude needed for a game like this. That people come into this generally new and they bitch about these types of things. I don't think this is an issue of people who've been around for a while having an issue with this. I think people who've been here for a while know that engineering and this type of gameplay is very important for reasons I've already expressed on this particular stream. So if you're wondering what those are, you'll see a highlight on the channel where I talk about this for like an hour. I'm not going to get into this again. I think it was on the Star Citizen funding video. So if you're watching on YouTube and you see something that says Star Citizen funding or that video comes up, watch that and I talk about that in depth.
Reduction of wear and tear over the last few years is taking a huge step forward with damage going to components, fuses, and your ship's hull. But there are reasons this is actually a positive change to ship health for everybody that we'll talk about later in the video. So looking at these two complications, both the NPC crew and engineering gameplay, who is it that's actually worried about these developments in Star Citizen? Well, the game's player base is made of many opinions and camps of thought. The groups that feel this one most are the players who bought big ships, who want to play in a very specific way with those big ships, and who, most importantly, now believe that they cannot play in that way because a lack of NPC crew or the inclusion of engineering make it impossible. These players also don't really want to use the newly announced social tools that they're working on to play with others down the line. They essentially are looking for a single player experience. And a large amount of people put themselves in that camp. I ran a poll on this on the channel just a few days ago, and a quarter of you said you'd be sticking to smaller ships now due to engineering specifically. I think these worries are overblown for all but the worst cases of soloing large ships. I think most players will be fine, will barely notice engineering, won't need NPC crew like they might think, and I think most players...
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I've known Chris to design very hardcore elements within the game in terms of game mechanics, and I don't know if I'd 100% agree with that. I'm kind of mixed. I think that there will be issues where you do need crew that know what they're doing, and I think that's the whole intent and the purpose of why engineering's an important factor in game mechanic in larger ships. So I do disagree with that. I actually disagree with that.
Will actually benefit from engineering being added. Let me explain.
Yeah, Betty. Yeah. Right. We'll see. Let's hear his explanation. Yeah.
Should you be worried about all this? Well, yes and no. Many worries are coming from some extreme views. Most ships will be soloable to an extent. From what we've seen of engineering, ship maintenance isn't going to be an issue if you're flying your ship normally and not getting shot at all the time. But also, it's been pretty clear since the very beginning and reintroduced as an important aspect of the overall game that components and ships would deliver an experience akin to Sea of Thieves in space. That is, one that requires some hands-on love and care when in a tight situation. So if you've been working on that assumption this whole time and are okay with needing to look for some help when going into a larger scale battle or to get the highest efficiency out of your ships, then you have nothing to worry about. But I do understand some of you were thinking that extra help wouldn't have to be a pesky human. That being said, nothing else has changed. In fact, your worries shouldn't even start yet because we haven't even gotten a chance to try these features for ourselves.
No, but I can tell you this. If you're somebody who is a solo player and you want to have one of these larger ships and your plan is that you're going to have NPC crew be the crew, you are going to be staying in a very safe system or you're going to be blown up. I mean, that's just the way it is. Let's be real about this. You will not survive in a lawless system with an NPC crew, period. Maybe the only benefit of NPC crew are going to be gunners. In fact, I can see a future where NPC crew are mandatory on large ships in gunner spots. I can see that. However, in terms of the interior, in terms of engineers, you're going to want human if you're going into lawless space. And, you know, if you want to run it solo with an NPC crew, like a complete NPC crew, then I would stick in lawful space. Thank you, Dynus. Thank you so much for that, dude.
They were delayed from the initial 4.0 update, so engineering, fire hazards, and life support features are not yet in a place where we can determine how problematic they might be. I think many are missing the benefit of this addition too, that no matter what ship you use, often when you take damage, you'll be able to land and fix it on the spot. This means less returning to space stations, less trying to limp home when you can barely fly because of torque imbalances, and best of all, less times exploding in your ship every time you take a large amount of damage. That on its own means less times restarting, less times getting your inventory set up, less times running through the city, and less time not playing the game. Overall, this idea that ships will last longer based on how we treat them means that players have more control over their game session itself. But when these features do come, and we do have the chance to start testing out these scenarios for this gameplay and how they'll balance large ships, you should go out there and replicate the scenarios you see yourself doing in the future. Try them out, record the results, and post your findings with the reason why you think it's the right or wrong direction. The devs see this feedback, and whether we agree with each other's opinions or not, CIG should have the information, right? In fact, you can already give a small part of the gameplay, just a little nugget of engineering, a try in Arena Commander, and get some early ideas and some feedback in about what you might think.
You want to give your ship character. You want to have as many options and variables on especially larger ships as you can to make your ship your own. I think that's what solo players need to understand. So if you're worried, especially on larger ships, and you want to put an NPC crew on your ship and not have to deal with human beings, then do that. That's fine. I don't think that there's going to be a problem with that as long as you stay in a lawful-based system. And people don't understand that in the future, the security system that's going to be laid out for people that want to solo is going to be there in effect. And in effect, they will be safe somewhat in a lawful system with an NPC crew in a larger ship. They just cannot go into unlawful space. If they go into unlawful space, people would have taken the time to have the right amount of crew that are human, that have researched the ship, that customize the ship, that have made the ship so much, that have given the ship a character, that have literally taken the time to make the ship a living, breathing entity that gives it so much character, that gives it so much durability and effectiveness that it will outmatch other ships. And though that is a PvP mentality, and those people will gravitate to unlawful space. Do we get that? People will adapt for the rules that they want based upon how they play. And therefore, the security system has to actually be designed there so that people that don't want to take that amount of time, like solo players or NPC kind of, PvE players, will have a safe space in a safe area, in a safe, lawful system, and that will be provided to them. So people get way bent out of shape. People really get way bent out of shape on this stuff. The options need to be there to make your ship as customizable as possible. The larger the ship, the more variables, the more custom you can make your ship, and a lot of people like that. It's called gameplay. You cannot take that away from a player base that really likes to focus on the details like that. Because to some people, engineers especially, that is their gameplay. So I don't think solo players would want to take that away from an entire gaming base. I don't think solo players understand that the complexity is actually the way some people like to play the game. My 2 cents.
The hardest part about our role in all of this is trying to keep in mind all the different features that will follow, affecting ship flight and gameplay and where they land. As mentioned earlier, NPC crews are coming to the game, but not until after 1.0. This makes a big difference in your ability to solo a large ship when in combat or attempting to reach peak efficiency.
Yeah.
AI.
Great question. In chat, Wicked Wookie says, do you think people who want NPC crewmen would prefer to battle NPC as well, or do they then want battle players with their NPC crew? And maybe they can do that, in areas. But if they're going to battle with one another and they're like solo player in larger ships with all NPC crew, they're going to have to go to unlawful space. And if they do that, the second they do that, Wiki, they're going to be surrounded by people who have taken the time out to pimp out their ships and have an all-human gaming crew that's going to wreck them. I don't think that safe space is going to allow a solo player with an all NPC crew and a solo player with all NPC crew allow them to fight one another in safe space, but we shall see. I would say it's basically spec'd upon lawful and unlawful space. We'll see. As the system security develops, perhaps there'll be areas where that can happen.
Blades, which can control things like turrets or other ship functions, are less capable versions of similar tech, and will greatly assist players in some functions around their ships, both big and small. These are planned for 1.0, and thus we'll probably see them sooner, but still likely not for years. And these are just two of many features in the process of building out our ship's relationships with the game and around it. VTOL thrusters, quantum boost, armor ratings, quality tiers, power management, control surfaces, logging on and off, taxes and fees, component wear and tear, hell, even dynamic server meshing are all going to have effect on or be affected by these larger ships in the game. It's a lot of things. This is a lot of stuff. And there are certain people who are solo players who just want that all out of the game, and I don't agree with that because there's more to it than just those types of gamers that find that actual gameplay. It's more than just that. It's everything else that's tied to those components, like who manufactured it, the people that like to manufacture the fuses or the parts and pieces of a ship. Those people depend upon those that like to customize their ships. So if you take out this engineering component, if you take out all these pieces and parts like some solo players want, then you take away fun from other people that like to play a game a certain way. And then you defeat the purpose. And then you actually take away from the player base, and you take away the amount of citizens that are actually playing this game because you've literally taken their style of gameplay away from them. It is all very... there's a symbiosis to it all. And that's why I'm a huge economic game player. I think that the most fascinating thing in an MMO is an economy. I can bore people to death talking about how important a good economy is to an MMO. That's why I want Tony Z. Can we get an amen? Tony Z, make a fucking appearance.
Yes! Can I get an amen? Yes!
Hashtag, where is Tony Z? Let's go. It's going to sleep.
Ships are going to be very complicated parts of Star Citizen, which is itself going to be a fairly complicated game.
Oh, you guys are saying Z. I thought you guys were going to sleep. I'm like, shit, I'm talking about the economy and you guys are going to sleep. You guys are like, Tony Z.
So there are going to be many opportunities for things like this to cause some uneasiness around the ships that you're looking into. And I would say for that reason, it's probably best not to get too invested in any one ship's particular statistics, and to not spend money on those ships based on said statistics. And this is all just to say that we're at one point in a very long list of development features and updates that will flesh these ships out into what they're supposed to be. And when it all does come down to how this is applied, I think CIG is going to steer a clear line down the middle of the path. I don't think engineering and ship maintenance will be so difficult that you can't fly around your big ship solo. But I do believe you're not going to be able to get much out of that ship at any one given time with only one body in there. And I do believe that various difficulties like atmospheric flight, control surfaces, taxes and fees for hangar usage, defending bigger ships in more dangerous situations, and fuel costs are going to make large ships less interesting to take out regardless, unless you're doing something important. This game has never been shy about money sinks and game-focused trade-offs. They've just been not implementing them as much lately. Now, we're going to start to see the needs for power, something that has been in games since 3.0 with the pipes and items 2.0 system, but not utilized much outside of thrusters and weapon systems. Armor is becoming more specialized to benefit stealth, power, or even EVA capabilities. Something that's been in the plans since at least the multi-tool was introduced as a method of getting around if you don't have an EVA capable suit. And yes, if your power supply takes too much damage and runs into a glitch, it could start a fire, and you'll have to be the one to run the length of a football field to the back of your ship to put it out. Prepare the...
And I think that's awesome. Like, a lot of people, they look at this and they go, oh no. And I'm like, then why are you playing this game? Like, I don't get that. Like, this is fascinating to me. Like, not taking care of your ship means this is what happens. Like, I think that's cool.
And you'll have to be the one to run the length of a football field to the back of your ship to put it out, repair the component, and swap a fuse. The gaming-focused trade-offs are starting to land. But how often are you really taking that much damage? This to me is that middle of the path road. For players who don't abuse their ship, I think this is a change that you won't really notice too much. It's mainly going to be combat players who are already taking a lot of damage to their ships, and players who want to run multiple stations on their industrial focused ships all at once, all the time, at full power. I mean, you guys are already
like the juicy Orion that I cannot wait for. A juicy Orion. Oh.
Taking plenty of damage out there fighting and then returning to a space station and getting repaired. You can still do that with this same system. Land at a space station, touch up your components and get your health rechecked, and then go off and do whatever you were doing. If you're just flying around, you'll likely rarely have to touch your components. In fact, as your components are taking damage and need to be repaired out there, you'll be able to do it right there on the go, in the field without returning to a space station because of this new system. Or you'll be able to steal components from ships you find, or bring replacements with you and store them in your cargo hold. And as an added benefit, your ship's also not going to explode anymore and just game over every time you take too much damage. This system, in my opinion, brings more pros than cons to the ship situation.
Absolutely.
And the cons
Totally
mainly
agree.
seem to aim to balance ships without making them impossible to use. That being said, expectations had been set based on having a couple extra helping hands there that didn't need to be slimy, pesky humans. And this all
I am not trying to make people who love PvE experiences and solo game experiences feel bad by saying this. I really, really am not. And I get that. I get that. Some days you don't want to talk to another fucking human being. Some days you want to get into a game and you just want to escape everyone and everything and get lost in the game. I completely understand that. But I cannot say this enough. This is an MMO. Do I need to go any further than that? I don't think so.
all combines, I think, to be more on people's minds as the realities of Star Citizen become more, well, reality. And we're seeing the impact of that on IAE, through the different sales numbers we're catching, to just the general discussion I'm sure you might be hearing in your own circles in the community. Star Citizen has been talk for so long. Now that features are finally starting to get implemented and systems are coming online, the actual focus is returning to how this gameplay will affect the players. As always, keep these things in mind when playing the game. It'll always be changing until we reach the 1.0 goal, which I covered in this video up in the corner.
I love that this part of the
Always
presentation.
be changing until we reach.
I love this part of the presentation, how they ended this on the second day and said that there's a symbiosis to all of this. The community, the PvEers, the non-combats, and the PvP, and it's all a symbiosis. They all have to function correctly, and they all have to be balanced correctly. In order for this to be a proper MMO, everybody's type of game style has to be accommodated for. Totally agree with that. While I'm not PvE oriented and very entrenched in the PvP world, I totally understand needing PvEers. I hope PvEers can actually understand why PvPers are needed. Why? Because if you're PvEer, you're going to need to have people that bring you tons of demand. The demand being items in the game that will make these PvPers better PvPers and therefore buy things from your PvE missions and those people that are making the items that the PvPers need. This column here is the demand. This bottom column, the left side of this circle is your primary demand. The bottom of the circle and the right of the circle are your supply. And the community section is kind of where it all merges, right? And I love the way that they talked about this symbiosis because I have not seen a lot of developers talk about what makes an MMO an MMO. This was such a perfect cherry on the top of the sundae on the second day. The second day was amazing. I wish they would have really come out with guns blazing on the first day because, like I said earlier on a highlight, I think that it's so important that they just come out the gate with guns blazing on the first day to keep people interested to bring them back the second day. Because like I and a lot of other Star Citizen content creators noticed, there were more people on the first day than there were the second day. The first day kind of fell flat. We also saw that in the numbers for funding on CitizenCon. We talked about that prior, but this symbiosis, this circle is so very important in making a successful MMO, and not a lot of developers get this that are in the MMO world, that are designing an MMO. A lot of developers fall short on this, and that is why their title fails. Great example recently that I got involved in that was an MMO was Dual Universe. Dual Universe, it had so much potential, and it just, they didn't understand this. They didn't get this. So many MMOs have failed because they do not understand this template.
Reach the 1.0 goal, which I covered in this video up in the corner. I'd check that out. I advise not to spend more money than you want to support the game. Otherwise,
like I said that earlier too, Erad. I actually like the first day as well, but it falls short compared to last year's first day, and I talked about that in depth on the funding highlight.
You can earn everything else in the game at some point. And should you be worried about how ships are changing? I think only if you expect to get the absolute highest efficiency out of a bigger ship on your own. Because remember, everything can be flown and even operated by one person. It's just a matter of how well you can do it.
Good to see you, man.
If you'd like to get started at this year's IAE during this current free...
Listen, awesome video, Space Tomato. Good.